Welcome to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, thanking you for joining us today. And today is July 12. I hope I'm correct because medyo tayo po ay nawawala na sa kalendaryo. But anyway, welcome to the program. And please join us because we are going to be talking about different but very interesting topics. And we will be covering quite a lot of issues. Anyway, let's get on with today's program with the daily starter. The opinion, of 10,000 men does not matter if none of them know anything about the subject. Okay, Marcus Aurelius. Okay, that's a very interesting topic because nowadays everyone has an opinion. We all have an opinion, but the question is, are we experts in the area? So we will try to use that as our guide for today. Let's now go to the front page of the Philippine Star and let's find out what's up. Okay, there we go. Bongbong Marcos, or President BBM, picks Lotilla as energy chief. For those of you who are not familiar, the Lotilla being referred to is Rafael Lotilla, who was energy secretary from 2005 to 2007. He also served as president of the PISALM, or the State-Run Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corporation. However, the appointment or selection of Mr. Lotilla is still under study and being debated, subsequently now under debate, because there is apparently a law that prohibits the hiring, appointment of any individual who is employed or directly associated to a company in the sector for which he is about to hold a government position. In other words, dahil pinili siyang energy secretary, may issue because Mr. Lotilla, or former Secretary Lotilla, is currently an independent director of Aboitiz Power, as well as ex-Nesor Bioenergy. And if I remember correctly, the law says that you cannot hold a government position or be appointed to a government position for at least 2 years upon your retirement, resignation, or departure from the private sector. Pasensya na po, medyo na-explain natin yan kasi baka mag-presume yung marami. Okay, at the top of the front page, vaccine expert pushes for Dengvaxia use. Okay, our friend Dr. Ronjin Solante has suggested, has advised, is pushing for the Philippines to conduct the necessary studies, evaluation for the use of Dengvaxia because of the growing number of dengue cases and the fact that it has been approved for use in numerous countries in Asia. Yan na po ang sinasabi natin on agenda many times. Where is the study of the 700,000 children who were vaccinated, including my own daughter? They were vaccinated, but no one really came out with a post-vaccination study of that population. Meanwhile, below that header, dengue cases up 90% this year. So kahapon po, sinabi ko na sa inyo na yung measles, chikungunya ba yun? Or something, hindi ko na masabi yung term. And dengue are up. Okay. Meralco, meanwhile, cuts July rates by 71 centavos per kilowatt hour. Ayon. Habang tumataas ang bilang ng mga sakit, bumaba naman ang singil ng Meralco in compliance with the Energy Regulatory Commission's mandate order for a refund for Meralco customers. And another good news, gas prices slashed by 5 pesos 70 centavos. Diesel went down by 6 pesos and 10 centavos. Okay, so yun po, the best news of this month is that substantial reduction in fuel prices. And allegedly, according to the authorities, bababa pa raw yan. Meanwhile, DTI decides on price hike petitions in coming weeks. Yan pong price hike na yan is for consumer goods, okay? Yeah, not about fuel. And world population to hit 8 billion, okay? And the Philippines is among the top 8 contributors. Kumbaga, ang lakas manganak ng mga Pilipino, we will be one of the top 8 contributors to the population. And while we may find that amusing, the subsequent generations may say, anyari, bakit nyo pinabayaan yung ating population considering the meager resources of the nation? Last but not the least, that photo in the lower right corner of the Philippine Star ay hindi mga nagbabakasyon, hindi po yan mga turista. They are citizens of Sri Lanka who invaded the presidential palace this week, okay, and are now lying in the bed of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Okay, it is a reminder to world leaders that your mistakes can have dire consequences. In-invade yung kanyang palasyo, and now he is being forced to resign along with his prime minister. Okay, and that wraps up the front page of the Philippine Star. Now let's go to our first interview, and I have to read a particular piece of material because it will establish why we invited this gentleman. Okay, none other than former Agriculture Secretary Manny Piñol. He posted on his Facebook account by publicly challenging, the campaign promise of the new president to review and amend the rice tarification law. Jokno has shown his true colors and allegiance to the gang of economists who brought the country's food security situation to its precarious state now, largely dependent on imports. Okay. Yan, the call of the Philippine rice industry sector is a review and amendment of the rice tarification law, not a total repeal because there are loopholes. If Jokno believes otherwise, I am willing to face him in a public debate on the rice tarification law. Anyway, let's do the introductions first. I'm just establishing kasi medyo mainit po itong topic na ito. Baka sabihin nyo, nagkakampi-kampi kami. We tried to invite Secretary Jokno to the show, but apparently they are very busy preparing for the State of the Nation address, the first SONA of BBM. Let's do the intro on Secretary Piñol.
Manny Piñol held various government positions in Cotabato, including governor and vice governor. In 2016, he was appointed Agriculture Secretary by then-President Rodrigo Duterte. He was also made concurrent head of the National Food Authority Council in September 2018 and chair of the Mindanao Development Authority in 2019. In October 2021, Piñol filed his candidacy for the 2022 Senate election, where he finished 32nd with over 3.5 million votes.
Secretary Piñol, and hindi ko pa nabasa ng kabuuan yung pinost mo sa Facebook, Pero medyo malupit. I will use the term. It was quite stringent, ika nga nila, parang mouthwash eh. A Jokno either does not understand agriculture or is simply anti-agriculture. Sec Manny there, Sec Manny Piñol is, okay, you're looking well, so let's get back onto the program. What's going on, Sec Manny? Medyo departure yata yan from your diplomatic ways. Diretsa mo nang sinabing either wala siyang alam o wala siyang karapatan.
Well, actually, hindi naman sekreto yan, Cito. From the very start, alam naman ng taong bayan yung aking posisyon, no? I have always believed that given the enabling policies and legislations, our country could be food sufficient. We could produce enough food for our country. And the basis of my position is very clear. Meron tayong humigit kumulang 30 million hectares. Meron tayong panglimang pinakamahabang dalampasigan sa buong Pilipinas, sa buong mundo, no? 36,289 kilometers of coastline. But from the very beginning, I had been at odds with the economic managers of the previous administration for the very simple reason that I really emphasized on increasing local production. But I can understand where they came from actually. Ang kanila kasi, they wanted to address the quarterly inflation numbers, which naintindihan ko naman, no? Kanya lang, if you look at that problem from a quarterly perspective, talagang hindi ka magkakaroon ng long-term na agricultural development program. And this has been the bane of our agricultural planning in this country. We had either been so focused on addressing quarterly inflations or pleasing whoever the president is. So yung ating programa, masyadong nakatali sa political terms. 6 na taon, they wanted to please the president. But I explained from the very beginning that improving agriculture in the country cannot be finished in 6 years. It has got to be a continuing effort because sabi ko nga, kapag nagtanim ka ng niyog na bagong variety ngayon, 5 taon bago ka harvest. And I explained this very clearly during the several cabinet meetings.
Yes, Sec Manny, but saan nanggaling itong disagreement and discourse with Secretary Jokno? In fact, there were like this, for instance, that citing data, you said this, citing data he was reading from a piece of paper. Jokno said increasing irrigation coverage did not result in increased production. And to quote you, muntik akong mahulog sa upuan ko nang marinig ko yun.
Yes, it was one cabinet meeting actually, Cito, where I presented the need to cover more areas for irrigation. Kasi at the rate we are growing in population, binanggit mo na kanina, isa tayo sa pinaka-fastest growing country in population. No? Kung titignan natin yung ating population growth vis-a-vis rice production, we needed to irrigate 80,000 hectares every year to catch up with the rate of increase in production. At the time I made that presentation, NIA was only irrigating 30,000 hectares every year. So ang ating backlog was 50,000. So I proposed the implementation of a faster way of irrigating our land, which was the solar-powered irrigation system na kaya mong tapusin in 4 to 6 months. And when I presented that, kasi ang total cost ng project to cover 500,000 hectares was about 40 billion pesos. And this was using Israeli technology. In fact, yung pera na yon ipapautang sa atin ng Israel. So I made a presentation, and I don't know where Secretary Jokno based his numbers. Pero sabi niya, and I still remember it very very clearly. Mr. President, sabi niya, can I comment on this? I am looking at the records of the previous administrations in relation to irrigation. And he said that during the time of, I think, GMA, when there was massive efforts on irrigation, ang production was just the same as when during the period na wala masyadong efforts to irrigate more land. So sabi ko, I don't know if this guy understands agriculture, but you cannot have agriculture without water, Cito. And you know that, you're a farmer. You cannot, especially rice, hindi ka pwedeng magtanim ng palay expect a high yield if you are dependent on the precipitation. Kung kailan
Okay.
napapatak yung ulan saka ka magkatubig.
Okay, pero ang problem natin dito, Sec Manny or former Secretary Piñol, you're no longer in government. And obviously, the President himself, BBM, has taken over the helm of the Department of Agriculture, which you have praised and which you have complimented. What are you hoping to accomplish? Kasi parang tinarget mo si Ben Jokno, pero at the end of the day, what do you hope to accomplish
Well,
by...
actually, I commented on that issue because here is the Finance Secretary
Mhm.
whom I know from the days we were together in the cabinet as somebody who doesn't really understand profoundly agriculture,
Mhm.
telling the president to renege on his commitment to the Filipino rice farmers to review and amend the rice tariffication law. Doon ako napikon. Bakit teka muna, Finance
We're
Secretary
talking
ka,
about BBM, ah.
Yes, of course. BBM. BBM na. Kasi si BBM, during the campaign period, and I was following actually his pronouncements, no?
Mhm.
During the campaign period, he was one of those presidential candidates. The other was Ping Lacson, who touched on the issue of rice tariffication. In fact, I remember correctly, ang sabi ni BBM was he would look into the amendment of the rice tariffication law because he understood the implications of that law on the life of the Filipino rice farmers. So it was a campaign commitment. And here is the Finance Secretary telling the President, hey, don't scrap the RTL. Para sa akin, uncalled for. Because number one, you're talking to your principal. Number two, you're trying to refute his campaign commitments. So I had to explain, hey, campaign commitment ito ng presidente ngayon. And although I did not support him in the last elections, I believe in his advocacy right now. So para sa akin, that was too much. No, you're a member of the cabinet of the president who made a commitment during the campaign period that he will review and amend the rice tariffication law. And here you are. Never mind the level of your understanding of agriculture. Telling him, hey, kalimutan mo yan. Wag nating scrap yung rice tariffication law. Para sa akin, hindi tama yon. Uncalled for.
Okay, what is the big deal? And pasensya ka na po, no? Kasi siyempre may I'm representing people na hindi naman namin naiintindihan lahat ng detalye na yan. Sabi nga ni Marcos Aurelius, kahit 10 million pa kayo o 10,000, kung puro kayo walang alam, mahirap magbigay ng opinion. Pero ano ba, what is the big deal about the rice tariffication law and the push of people to have it reviewed or actually repealed pa yung iba eh?
Well, number one, saan ba galing yung rice tariffication law? Matagal nang nilalabi yan ng World Bank, ng ADB sa atin. Nabuksan natin yung ating merkado to imported rice, which we opened actually, no. Ang punto lang noon, merong pakialam ng gobyerno, may regulatory at saka supervisory powers ang National Food Authority over the importation of rice, no.
Okay.
Ibig sabihin, you cannot import more than what the country actually needs. Kaya lang, dumating na tayo sa puntong dapat na nating ma-lift yung restrictions. I have no problem with that, Cito. Ang safety net sana doon was the adjustment in the tariff levels. Ibig sabihin, kung marami tayong ani sa Pilipinas, dapat itaas ang tariff level. Kung kaunti ang ani natin, ibaba ang tariff level para makapasok yung imported rice, which is what Korea is doing, which is Japan is doing, and I have no problem with it. Okay? Ang nangyari, instead of doing that, ang ginawa ni Secretary Dominguez, yung economic team, they pushed for the total liberalization of the rice industry in the Philippines, the rice market. Ibig sabihin, hey, NFA, wag ka na makialam dyan. Leave this commodity to the private sector. They forgot, Cito, that historically, the rice industry in the country had always been controlled by the rice cartel. Ito yung big business na nag-control ng presyohan, volume, delivery in the market, and so on and so forth. Kaya, ang nangyari, noong buksan nila yan, binaha ng mga importers yung merkado, hindi sila namili ng local na palay ng mga farmers, resulting to the depression of the farm gate prices from a high of 22 when I was Secretary of Agriculture sa private sector, 2050 sa NFA, to a low of 12 pesos. No? So, ang sinasabi nila nung pinopropose nila yung rice certification, hey, Mr. President, allow the entry of unimpeded, yung word na ginamit ng unimpeded entry of imported rice, because it will stabilize the price of rice in the market, it will reduce the price in the market by 7 pesos, and it will improve the lives of the rice farmers because the tariff that we will collect will be given to the rice farmers to improve their productivity. Now, looking back, yun ang commitment nila. Look at the market now. Wala na yung 27 pesos na bigas ng NFA. Wala na yung 36 pesos. Ang pinakamababang magandang klaseng bigas ngayon sa palengke, 40. And they're saying that rice daw does not contribute to inflation numbers anymore. Hey, tika muna. Noong 36, nakakontribute sa rise in inflation numbers, kaya yung 40, hindi na? Anong klaseng arithmetic
Okay.
yan?
So let's go back to the main issue na may away ka. Well, not
Hindi naman away actually.
Hindi naman away.
Disagreement.
May disagreement ka with economic managers. But won't that situation change because BBM is now President and concurrent Secretary of Agriculture? Or yung ba ay mababaliwala dahil merong isang malaking grupo ng economic managers na pagtutulungan siya?
That is precisely the reason why I fully supported the decision of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to take over the Department of Agriculture. Kasi para sa akin, ito na yung dahilan eh. Ito na yung magiging gabay or magiging way to really get things going sa Department of Agriculture. So you can just imagine, kung yung presidente mismo kini-question yung kanyang view on the amendment of the rice certification law. Ako pa kaya, halimbawa ako Secretary of Agriculture, pareho lang kami ng rangko, hindi pa kaya lang ako bamboozle or i-oppose yung aking mga proposals. That's why I really believe that if President Marcos Jr. would like agriculture to develop and flourish during his term, he should hold on to that position until the end of his term.
Okay, but what about the influence of the economic team? Kasi ikaw, nawala ka sa posisyon dahil doon sa mga economic advisors.
Well, inintriga nila ako and I resigned. No? Hindi ako sinipa Cito. They wanted me to resign. And when I felt the pressure, actually I volunteered to resign. No? But look, dito natin makikita ngayon ang tibay ni BBM as a president. If his campaign commitment could not be realized simply because he will listen to the advice of his economic managers, diyan natin makikita kung anong klase presidente siya.
Okay, so in real terms, magkakaalaman if BBM calls for the review or repeal. Kasi iba yung, sige, ni-review namin. Wala, pare, kailangan natin yan. Sabi ng economic manager, kailangan niya. Or repeal.
Actually, hindi naman kailangang i-repeal, Cito. We don't really need to repeal it. No? We only need to amend the rice certification law. Number one, kailangan nating ibalik ang regulatory at supervisory powers ng NFA over the rice industry. Kasi right now, although malaki ang nakolekta ng gobyerno sa tariff, maraming technical smuggling. Kasi wala nang nagsusupervise para i-determine kung anong klaseng bigas ang pinapapasok. You have to understand, tatlong classification ng bigas eh.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Segmani, pasensya ka na, no? But, okay, alam natin yung smuggling. Malaking issue na nga yan eh. Kanya pumasok nga si BBM dyan. Pero yung perang nakolekta sa buwis, the money that was collected from the rice tarification, what happened to that? If you said the government collected so much money, umabot ba sa magsasaka?
Yes, umabot naman sa magsasaka, but in ways and methods na sa tingin ko hindi masyado nakakontribute sa increase ng productivity. Well,
meaning,
first, yung 10 billion pinaghati-hati kagad yun sa batas eh. Yung batas na ginawa nila was so specific na nagsabing, hey, 10 billion ang expected annual tariff. 5 billion of that should be for machineries. 3 billion for seeds. 1 billion for pautang. 1 billion for training. Yun lang yung nakapaloob doon. Ang problema dyan, if you talk to the farmers, they will tell you that the things that they need to improve their productivity is number one, irrigation, because there is no water. There is
Pero,
no agriculture without water.
teka muna, sir. Pasensya ka na. Okay, sabi mo 5 billion sa machinery. Yung bang 5 billion na yung pinamigay na libreng mga makinarya
Yes.
o uutangin?
Libre makinaryas.
Okay, so okay yun. Good. Okay, yung seeds.
Good.
Libre
Good
ba yung
kung tama
seeds?
makinarya. Good kung tama makinarya.
Aha.
Ang problema natin, kaya nga in-explain ko sa inyo Kasi noong pag-umpisa ko, Cito, as Secretary of Agriculture, ang isa sa sinabi ko kay Presidente Duterte, sabi ko, ang pinakamadali natin ma-achieve rice sufficiency. But there are several fundamental things that we have to address. And I talked to the outstanding rice farmers of the Philippines. Most of them are from Luzon, Central Luzon, Nueva Ecija. Ang national average natin, Cito, is 4 metric tons or 3.5 something. Ang Nueva Ecija ng mga farmers, they harvest as much as 12 to 14 metric tons per hectare. So tinanong ko sila, what makes a difference? Why is the national average only 4 and you're harvesting 12, 14? So sabi ng mga farmers, outstanding farmers, sir, sagana yung tubig namin. Sir, gumagamit kami ng hybrid. Sir, sagana yung aming abono. Sir, maganda yung presyo kay ganado kami. So yung four basic elements in increasing rice productivity, tinanong ko sila, na-address ba ito ng allocation ng pondo sa rice tarification? No. Because yung 5 billion, karamihan doon, ang pinamili, traktora, maski kalabaw ang gamit Cito ng farmer, kung magandang presyo, mag-aararo yan na madaling araw pa. Pero maski air condition na traktora ang gamit nila, kung ang presyo 12, hindi mag-aararo yan. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Having said that, maraming nagsasabi na wala nang gana yung maraming mga rice farmers and ang ginagawa nila ay nagsasaka na lang sila or they are planting rice for personal or community consumption. They are no longer thinking of national targets, national averages. Parang bahala kayo sa buhay nyo. Kami magtatanim na lang nung kakainin namin.
Correct.
What's wrong with that?
That is the atmosphere right now in the rice industry.
But isn't that something we need to go through? Kasi parang may mga nagsasabi din, so 60% ng agriculture budget na pupunta sa bigas in a country that is now slowly but surely threatened by diabetes at saka obesity. Kumbaga,
Nako.
Hindi, sandali. Huwag ka magre-react masyado. Sinasabi ko lang sa'yo yung sinasabi ng mga tao.
Yeah.
Para magkaroon tayong maliwanag na pagpapaliwanag.
Okay.
Oo.
Obesity. Tingnan niyo yung data. Ano ang bansang pinakamaraming obese? Number 5 yata o number 6 ang Amerika. Nasaan Pilipinas? Wala sa Kung totoong rice ang pinanggagalingan ng obesity, bakit ang papayat ng mga Vietnamese sa mga Thailander? No, so they're actually making rice the culprit, sa isang imagined na disease.
Yung yung 60% ng agriculture budget na bobomba lang sa rice na
because mali nga ang target ng kanilang allocation. Can you imagine, ang RCEF dapat, yung Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund dapat, ginagamit yan to machineries which would boost the productivity of farmers. Number one, dryer. Inabandon nila yung dryer. Inuna yung traktora. I don't know for what reason. No? So, puro traktora. Sabi ko nga, maski air condition ng traktora mo, kung ang presyo ng palay ay 12, paano mo i-encourage si farmer na magtanim na marami? Okay? Now,
may nakausap akong isang industry representative, yung sa broilers ba, yung Ubra.
sila Bong Insyong, yan.
Sabi ni Mr. San Diego, si Elliot. Sabi niya, Cito, kanya umunlad ang poultry in Thailand, Vietnam, etc., is because they do not allow importation of poultry products to their nation. They are self-sufficient, self-reliant. Dito ba sa Pilipinas, dapat pa bang gawin yun? Kasi sabi nga nung iba, masyadong malaking pera na pupunta sa bigas.
Ang isang dahilan why the growing and production intentions of our farmers are dampened is because of the threat of a deluge of imported chicken, imported pork, and imported rice. Maski ikaw man, ikaw magmamanok ka. Alam mong any given time, the economic managers may decide to bring in so much imported chicken that will depress the prices in the market. Will you invest so much? No, of course not. But if you're a broiler farmer and the government says, hey, Cito, produce so much broiler chicken because the country needs so many millions of tons every year. Kayong mga broiler chicken, ito ang target nyo. Wouldn't you be encouraged? Alam mo na sigurado yung merkado mo, sigurado yung presyo mo. This is the
sorry, Sec Manny. Okay, so maliwanag na tayo sa lahat na yan. Okay. May mga nagsasabi, in fact, the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food Incorporated has urged President BBM to consider declaring a state of emergency to curb the impact of a looming global food crisis. Ewan ko, kasi nung una kong, nung ako yung nag-uumpisang kinakampanya at ina-agenda ang food crisis, everyone was saying I'm an alarmist. Ngayon, everyone is saying we have a food crisis. What's your reaction to that call for a state of emergency?
Actually, I agree with you. There is a food crisis, or at least there is an impending food crisis. Prices have gone up. But what is the point of declaring a state of emergency? Tinatawaran niyo ba yung kapangyarihan ng Pangulo na gumawa ng paraan? The President has all the powers to do everything he could. He doesn't need to declare a state of emergency.
Yeah, but agriculture is agriculture takes time, Secretary, and you know that.
Yeah, I know, but would declaring a state of emergency hasten the growth of corn, or hasten the growth of rice, or hasten the growth of your pig? We just need to come up with a viable plan, Cito. Like number one, yung halimbawa, yung problema natin sa ASF, and I know you understand this.
Yeah.
Bakit pumalpak yung ASF na problema na yan? Sapagkat they were makukumpara ko sila to running after a runaway train. Hinahabol nila yung ASF. Dapat pangunahan mo yung ASF. You actually control it, and dapat doon ka mag-repopulate sa areas na walang ASF. Ang ginagawa nila, after a while, mag-repopulate ulit sila, di papalpak ulit. Number two, yung kanilang compensation sa mga farmers, kalahati lang ng halaga ng baboy. Siyempre yung farmer, instead of surrendering his hogs infected by the ASF para i-cull, kakatayin niya, benta yung karne, lalong kumalat yung problema.
Okay, maganda yung punto sinabi mo that if an area has been hit by ASF, then we should freeze the ball, which is the policy now.
Yeah.
And you should repopulate an area na ASF free. Nasabi rin ng, in fact, it was Ramon Ang who mentioned na para makatulong sa magpapalay o magsasaka, we should establish rice farming zones in areas where water is abundant. Kumbaga katulad dun sa ano bang bayan yun? Thailand ba yun? Vietnam, Cambodia, yung along the Mekong River, the Mekong Delta, etc. Sabi niya, yung mga ganon, katulad sa Pilipinas, Cagayan Valley River, dapat doon ilocate lahat yung mga rice farms. Kasi kailangan mas water dependent yung mga pagtatanim ng palay.
Well, that's a sound idea, but you have to understand, Cito, that beyond all of this, the most important factor that will determine rice productivity is the price of rice at farm gate. Kasi maski sagana pa yung tubig dyan, kung 10 piso ang kilo ng palay, hindi magtatanim si farmer.
Yeah,
so,
pero
I don't know, let me refresh your memory. Panahon ni GMA, si Secretary Art Yap ang Secretary of Agriculture.
Yes.
Umabot ng $1,000 ang metric tons ng imported na rice. Alam mo ba nangyari nung tumaas yung presyo ng palay sa palengke? Pati gilid ng kalsada tinataniman ng farmer ng palay. So, profitability is the most effective motivator of productivity.
Okay, but my problem with that, Sir Manny, is the fact that it is not the farmers who dictate farm gate prices. Kasi katulad na lang doon sa poultry, sabi ni San Diego, magpo-produce kami. Pagkatapos sasabihin naman ng mga large buyers o ng mga fast food chains, okay, kailangan dahil bulto kami bumili, you have to give us a lower price. and you can only collect payment after 90 days. Now, is the government not allowed to peg or set farm gate prices, and can nothing be done about those unjust and unfair 90-day terms na hindi
Actually,
babayaran?
the government can do it. In fact, merong ang Magna Carta for corn farmers which sets the minimum buying price of corn in the market. Pero ino-observe ba? Ano ang penal clause ng batas na yun? Wala. No. So ang suggestion ko diyan, this is something that our economists must really look into, and should consider food security as an important. Sabi nga ni President Marcos, it is an existential imperative. Ang ganda ng phrase na yun eh. Ibig sabihin, our existence actually depends on the availability of food and affordability of food. So anong kailangan gawin dyan? Cito, kailangan makialam ng gobyerno. Hindi pwedeng pabayaan to. Sapagkat ang problema natin sa Pilipinas is the redistribution of food supplies.
Okay.
Nakita mo yung mga bulok ng kamatis sa Bukidnon na tinatapon na lang? Bakit tinatapon? Kasi wala silang access sa Negros, wala silang access sa Samar, wala silang access sa Cebu. Kung meron sanang food terminal incorporated sa Bukidnon na bibili ng kamatis na yon at an agreed price prior to planting, prior to harvest, sinong magkakamatis ang hindi gaganahang magtanim? Government must come in. There's no other way.
Sec Manny, thank you for your time today, and sana naman hindi kayo magkapikunan ni Secretary Benjok, no, dahil alam ko naman matitino kayo mga individual. Siguro passionate lang kayo pareho. Not that. Thank you for your time this morning.
Salamat.
I know it won't be the last.
Nothing personal, Cito. Nothing personal.
Okay, thank you for your time, and hope to see you again, and sana may nakikinig sa Malacanang para lahat kayo na may mga experience and knowledge magsama-sama, dahil mahirap mamatay ng gutom, tinatawag na yung ibang patay gutom, mamamatay pa ng gutom. Thank you very much, Sec Manny. Okay. That's former Secretary Manny Piñol. We now go for a quick break. And when we return, pag-usapan naman natin, let's talk about disaster resiliency. Now, sabihin nyo, ay naku, boring yan, kuya. Hello po, no? Banawe, Ifugao, ayun po is reminding us once again that we have a problem and we should pay attention. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Beltran, thanking you for being subscribers of Cignal TV and also viewers of One News PH on channels 8 and 250. And maraming salamat sa PLDT for their home fiber optic internet dahil walang laglag, walang laylay. Okay, as I mentioned before the break, things have not been very well for the people of Banawe, Ifugao. In fact, according to the data provided to me by Team Agenda, the total estimated agriculture damage and losses in Ifugao is now at 20.17 million, according to the Department of Agriculture. Some parts of Banawe rice terraces were also damaged by the flash flood in Ifugao last week. Roads to Banawe, Ifugao are now passable after heavy rains. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council earlier reported 3 individuals were injured. Around 500 families were also affected by the incident. In 2015, some towns in Ifugao were heavily damaged by Typhoon Lando, and the typhoon destroyed agriculture and infrastructure projects worth more than 73 million. Let's now discuss the subject matter of disaster resiliency and the prospects of the environment and the landscape in the northernmost part of the country with our next guest. And here's the introduction.
Professor Mahar Lagmay serves as Executive Director of UP Resilience Institute. He also leads a core component of the Institute, UP NOAA Center, a research center for climate actions and disaster risk reduction and management. Lagmay is also professor at UP's National Institute of Geological Sciences. His awards and recognition include the Plinius Medal by the European Geosciences Union and Gawad sa Kaunlaran by the AFP.
Okay, welcome to the program, Professor. Have a good day to you, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Cito. Hello.
Okay, Professor Lagmay, we invited you because we're quite concerned. I remember before COVID-19 hit, I remember we were all already very concerned about the Ifugao, all that area, the northern area, the highlands, na may mga parts dyan na na-declare nila no na red zone. And I'm not talking about communist zone. I'm talking about the geography, topography, and how unstable it has become. And there were a lot of landslides. In fact, yung mga miners, na mga natrap, etc. What is the situation several years later?
Yeah, I think you are referring to the Ompong landslides, no? In Benguet, where many people died in that area. I believe that is in Ukab, no? Sa Ukab, Itogon. Now we have again that those landslides that happened sa Banawe, and marami pa actually tayong mga landslides eh. Di ba? During Odette, we had landslides sa Bohol, sa Leyte. In fact, we're going there next week to study those landslides which killed many people. The problem is not only in Car, no? It's all over the Philippines where there are mountainous areas, where there are steep slopes that have been weathered by time, no? Weathered by the elements, and gravity is continuously working on them, pulling them down to create a landslide. And it only needs a trigger like earthquake shaking or heavy rainfall that will get them to go down and to go down and create that landslide that may be disastrous, no? That may kill many people. So we live in that kind of area, and it's a constant threat to us. Apart from landslides, we also have floods, we also have earthquakes, and we have to live with that because we're living in a country that is in the typhoon belt and is in the Pacific Ring of Fire.
Okay, now, is there any way to remedy the situation, help slow down the inevitable disaster coming our way. Kasi there are people who are talking about, oh, we need serious reforestation. Some people have said, you have to relocate those communities. Other people have said that it's a hopeless, it's a lost cause, yung mga na-declare na red zones, etc.
Yeah.
And, I'm sincerely concerned for the people there and what can happen in the long run. Kasi yung gumalaw sa itaas ng bundok, what shifts at the top and what is washed from the top will come down to those
Right.
below.
That's right. So you're asking me what can be done to remedy the situation. No? And you also mentioned the word disaster.
Mhm.
If there are hazards like a landslide that happens in an area where there are no people, nobody taking advantage of the land, nobody farming the land.
Mhm.
If the hazard like a landslide or a flood happens, there will be no disaster to talk about. But
Mhm.
if it hits a community and parcels of land that are being used by the community, then there may be a disaster when the hazard strikes, like a landslide happens.
Mhm.
So all that we can do is to be able to plan and develop our communities away from the hazard. There are places like that in the Philippines, even if there are red zones. Even in CAR, there are places that we can identify as the safest in the community. So if we develop there out of harm's way, even if those typhoons and heavy rains happen, the landslides happen, then they won't strike the community. No, if they are out of harm's way, there will be no disaster. And there are two types of disasters that I'd like to talk to you about. No,
Okay.
maybe there are more, but one is disasters wherein there are many fatalities or many deaths involved.
Mhm.
And another definition of disaster is that there's a large loss of property, losses and damages.
Mhm.
From 1986, when we studied the number of deaths, no, up to 2021, from 1986 to 1986 to 2013, we had more or less on average about 1,250 deaths per year due to landslides and floods and storm surges. 1,250 deaths per year. After that, from 2014 to 2021, we significantly reduced that to 250 on average. That's
Wow.
less by 1,000 deaths per year.
Mhm.
So going back to your question, is there anything that we can do? So we have done something. The Philippines has done something to lower that average number of deaths per year.
Mm.
However, in terms of losses and damages, it has not changed. The value of the cost of disasters in terms of losses and damages to property has remained the same since 1986.
How do you propose to achieve the same results in saving lives in terms of saving or preventing damage to property?
That is an excellent question, Chito, and that is what we need to do. We can do that by planning communities well, by getting the hazard maps that reflect also climate change scenarios
Mhm.
mainstreamed into the development planning process of communities. All 1,700, about 1,700 cities and municipalities of the country. So with proper development planning that also looks at the sectors that are affected, like the energy, education, tourism, and all other sectors affected, planned with the idea in mind to plan against all of these scenarios of disasters, you can anticipate future hazards, try to develop the community away from these hazards, which can be done,
Mhm.
but it's not being implemented well. So we have to do that All cities, all mayors should strive to get all of these plans to do it. We have been trying to do that for the city of Manila, Malanga, Science City of Muñoz, reflecting all of these scenarios of climate change, the hazards of different scenarios, and they plan the community according to the vision of the people in the community.
Is this a government program? Is this a national program? Or is this a initiative of the local officials? Kasi parang
Oh, it's
wala
part
naman.
of the law. Everybody's supposed to have a comprehensive land use plan. Everybody's supposed to have a climate change action plan. It's part of the law. Climate disaster risk assessment.
Does that, sorry, Professor, but does that law include population limits? Because if you remember, Boracay, one of the big issues in Boracay was the carrying capacity of the island. So much so that the government stepped in and said, no more. We are going to limit the number of people on this island, period. Ang daming mga local governments, the more the merrier, because the more they have consumers, the more votes they get. And it gets to the point where, teka, saan mo isasaksak yung mga bagong pasok na yan? Sa nicho.
Of course, the population is always considered when planning a community. So that is first and foremost what the community wants to have in the future and at present as well, so that it will become sustainable and all of their programs will also meet the sustainable development goals. So that is the basic idea of planning. You plan also with the hazards in mind.
Okay.
So if we have those hazards identified, you can develop long-term, like for example, set up a mall and all of the people will gravitate towards that area, which is the safest place in the community. If it's really not possible, maybe there are engineering measures that can be done. If it's really not possible, maybe because the typhoons don't come every day, the monsoon rains that are heavy don't come every day. So we have to rely on good forecasts. If we have good forecasts, they can temporarily move out and then go back when it's safe already.
Okay, before we run out of time, I mean, it's only fair to discuss the UP Institute, Resilience Institute, and yung mga ginagawa nyo, because I've heard of your group from time to time, but I honestly don't know much about it. What is the UP Resilience Institute and what services do you guys give?
Yeah, of course, Cito, no, your dad comes from the university. You know that there are many experts in the Philippines, in UP. Experts coming from the engineering fields, agriculture, the sciences, social sciences, health. No, when you plan communities, no, it has to bear in mind that you have to plan it to manage well the different sectors like energy, like tourism, like education. You know that the COVID pandemic affected all of these sectors. Di ba? Parang napatapa tayo. And that is one type of hazard, only a biological hazard. So when you plan communities, like what we're doing now, we have a USAID project going to help 6 cities all over the country. No? Right now, I'm in Tagaytay, by the way, having a workshop with the consortium, PDRF, CRC, doing this program for the country as best practice for resilience, no? Getting the communities to learn how to adapt to impacts of climate change, the hazardous impacts of climate change, to be able to bounce back after a disaster. But the real idea is to help these communities plan. Not just for today, but also for a decade from now or 5 decades from now, including climate change. And the term is adaptation. We do those plans now so that at the time when these threats come, we are already prepared because we planned well our communities.
Okay, so it's not just a matter of planting trees like in the good old days.
No. Well, it's one of them. It's one of them. But it goes way beyond that.
Yeah,
You have to
because
plan-
constructing all those houses disturbs the topography, disturbs the geography, the population, the roadways, the movement. Eh, napag-aralan ko rin, actually, applied knowledge yun sa akin sa Amerika, na pati yung kanal lang, yung maliit na natural stream, are not to be messed with because
Exactly.
natural streams can cause puddles, can cause flooding.
Yes, that's true. We're also doing the drainage master plan of Quezon City, and hopefully when we're done, we can not totally eradicate the floods, no? But at least for the smaller events, we can get rid of these nuisance street floods that happen on a yearly basis, which is very costly. The Japanese people are saying that we lose billions of pesos just from street floods that happen during thunderstorms. So we need to address all of those, plan to become resilient so that we can go on with the development of communities unhampered by hazards.
I can almost imagine that one of your future courses will involve a road and street engineers of different LGUs and the DPWH kasi magaling silang gumawa ng kanal. Pero yung kanal nila, tambakan na rin ng basura. So,
So
we have to adapt there.
That's
Okay.
right. And it's a whole of society approach. It's not just the government that should be responsible for the things that are happening. It's everyone.
Okay. Well, as far as what's happening in in the Cordillera area, etc., and high areas all over the country, do we simply try to avoid losing lives, or is there a way of preventing disasters by simply saying, putting a ban? Kasi may mga nagsasabi, eh bakit kasi hindi iban yung pagtatanim ng mga kung ano-ano dyan sa mga mountains para hindi na disturb yung topography?
Well, that is up to the expert in the field to put that in the plans of the community. No? Kasi iba-ibang areas, iba-iba yung situation. So you need to put in the experts who will understand the situation in the local area. Diba? So that's why I'm trying to emphasize that yung mga state universities and colleges are very important in building resilience for the country. No? So ang daming mga researchers diyan, scientists who know their expertise, no? Their field of specialization. And masyadong maraming mga questions. One example is the one that you just asked, no? Ano ba yung kailangan para sa lugar na yon? We need the local experts there to put in the science behind what they need to do. And I'd like to emphasize also that science is very important. It has worked for society. It has worked for us. We must trust in science in getting us to be able to solve the problem of disasters in the country.
We must work with science and we must also respect nature.
Yes, that's very important.
Okay.
Indigenous knowledge and the local knowledge is very important. No? Pati yung mga indigenous people, they know a lot about respecting nature. They know that things are connected with each other.
Okay. Well, Professor Mahar, thank you very, very much for your time. Good luck. And I pray for God to give you energy for your seminar there in Tagaytay.
Yes.
Palagian ako in the past na nagtuturo sa DAP back in the day. So alam kong nakakapagod yung ginagawa mong yan. But you are helping the country. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat din, Cito. And regards na lang to the family.
Okay. That's Professor Mahar Lagmay, Executive Director, UP Resilience Institute. Madagdag ko lang po isang kwento. I remember a story that I witnessed in America. There were people making a road, okay? And every so many months, the road would collapse in a particular portion. And they brought in engineers, they brought in experts, and the same thing happened. And until one day, a local farmer passed by and they asked the local farmer commented, well, you guys seem to have overlooked the fact that there is an underground stream cutting through that road. And they asked the farmer, what do you suggest? And he said, you should put a lot of rocks under the roadway so the water can pass through. Napakasimpleng bagay. Amerika pa yan, ha? Pero hindi nila na-realize they needed to respect nature and know where nature operates. Okay, let's close today's program with our blessing for the week from Genesis chapter 49, verse 25. May the God of your father help you. May the Almighty bless you with the blessings of the heavens above and blessings of the watery depths below and blessings of the breasts and of the womb. Okay, God bless all of you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today on Agenda. Please keep it here on One News PH.